Welcome, lovers. I don't know what I'm doing, but you probably already knew that. And today I decided that I was going to talk about times I felt like a deer in the frickin' headlights. Because, you go through life and you have those moments where something happens or somebody goes to talk to you and whatever it is just makes you go, fuck. And that's the kind of thing I felt like talking about today. So here we are. The first story I'd like to tell you is back when I was still a tiny little young nugget, I went to what was called Camp Tejas for our church camp summer take the children away from the parents for a week event. And each year that we did this, we had a little stage performance talent show thing towards the end of the week that we were there. Now, my particular group of people were trying to figure out, hey, what do we want to do? Because there was one year where they decided that, hey, every group has to do at least something. And most groups were like, well, hey, this one person wants to do something anyway, so we'll let them go up and represent us all. Or some of them were like, hey, we all like to do this thing, so we're all going to go up and do the thing. Well, I had a friend this particular year who absolutely loved listening to my stories because, as I have probably mentioned before, I have always been a storyteller, especially when I was a kid. I would just make up stories all the time, or like I'd think of something that I thought was funny that happened like a couple days ago and just like recount the story in a dramatic manner. And that was just one of the things I did, and they really enjoyed listening to me talk. So while we were trying to decide what we wanted to do, we came to the conclusion that 90% of the people in our group didn't want to go up on stage because, stage fright is a thing. And at the time, everyone who was there was aware of the fact that I was part of a dance studio, my mother's dance studio. They knew that I was part of the competition team, which meant I was used to going up on a stage and dancing in front of a bunch of fucking people. And because of this, a bunch of them turned to me and was like, hey, how about you do something on stage so the rest of us don't have to? And I was just sitting there like, wait, what? Because first of all, by this point, I was not used to doing things on my own in front of crowds. Second of all, when you're at dance competitions, there are bright ass lights in your face so you can't see the people watching you. Third of all, in that situation, it's like 90% people you don't know, so you don't care what they think about you. Whereas again, in this little church setting, I fucking knew everybody. So I was just kind of sitting there like, no, please no, I don't want to, no, I'm afraid, don't make me do this. But outwardly, I was just kind of like, And then, like, noticing my clear, can I not do this face? My immediate counselor, my small group study person counselor, was like, oh, hey, you don't have to dance in front of everyone if you don't want to, because that's what everyone suggested, because the whole dance studio thing. And then my lovely friend, not noticing the absolute horror on my face, just was like, oh, hey, how about you tell everyone one of your stories? And then everybody looked at him and was like, what stories? Huh. And while they go on continuously about, oh my gosh, they're so great at telling stories, they can make up a story and it'll be really interesting, and they told me this story about blah, 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 or about something that actually happened with blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And I was just sitting there in the background while they're doing this, like, stop! And they just kept freaking going, and I was like, can you not? Please, I don't want to do this. Oh my god, no! And then, like, literally, I spent, like, that whole time, like, just no! And it literally took my counselor specifically saying, how about we have her teach the whole group a basic dance routine, and then we can go up together, all the people who want to go up on stage. Like, literally, she had to intervene, like, at least a dozen times before everybody was like, oh yeah, okay, why not? But I just, the whole time was like, ah! The next story, in a very similar vein, also happened at church. So there was this thing they would do in the younger kids' church where we'd be sitting in that like giant room where we were all at, and on occasion they would have somebody stand up to read a verse that was up on like the big screen thing. And I was always very much the sit in the back of the room, hiding in the shadows kind of a kid, at least by this point, who was very much like, please don't call on me, don't look at me, don't talk to me. Like, I just did not want to be interacted with, especially in front of all the people there. But like, I just wanted to be ignored. I wanted to go to church, hear the sermon, sing with everybody, do the small group thing, and go home. That is all I wanted. Was that too much to ask? Apparently so. Because on the one frickin' day that I had had the most awful frickin' nightmare before waking up and having to go to church, and I just wanted to be left the fuck alone, and I was already really upset, this had to be the day that the frickin' person doing the sermon had to look to the back of the room and go, you, right? Just frickin' you, stand up and read the verse. And it also happened to be the day where we had a long verse instead of a short one. So I just had to fucking stand up in the back of the room after being like this for 2 minutes and then being like, come on, you got this, come on, read the verse, it's not that hard. And I'm just like, you don't understand, it is that hard, I have anxiety. But I had to stand up in front of all these people, most of which didn't even like me, because, as I may have specified beforehand, I didn't have great experiences at church a lot of the time. And so I stood up and started trying to read it, but I couldn't get my voice to go past a fucking whisper because I was terrified and very upset. And then, like, halfway through mumbling out and stuttering over my words, the person up front was like, I can't hear you, you gotta say it louder. I literally just looked up front and was like, like, I was like, my face started contorting, and I was very much that stubborn kid who would not cry in front of people. Like, my face was contorting because I was trying not to cry, and then, like, I couldn't breathe anymore, and I was just like, please stop. And then frickin', it took them squinting at me like this to realize that I was in a frickin' panic, and to go, oh, shit. Well, obviously they didn't say, oh, shit, we were in church. But, like, the look on their face was, like, sudden realization of, oh, shit. And they're like, that's okay, sit down, and then calling on somebody else. So I just kind of sat the fuck down, having people fucking look back to stare at me, and just being like, I want to go home. It was the worst. This next story, I swear, is the last one that is a church-related story. Is one that happened towards the end of the period of time when I actually was made to still go to church. So about the preteen age period of my life, we were all in this big church area as usual. Had moved a location because they put the preteens and the teens together. Preteens being 12, 13, teens being 14 through 18. So we were all just like in this room, and before church started, they would have like a little table of snacks and stuff we could just take some of, and we'd just sit around and walk around and talk to each other and all that jazz, waiting for the sermon to start. Me specifically, I had 2 or 3 friends I like to talk to during this period of time, but I couldn't find them for the life of me this day, so I was just kind of standing by the little snack table thing, eating my little bag of, I think it was chips or something. So I'm just over here, minding my own business, trying to stay away from people until the frickin' sermon started, when out of the blue, random guy, I have no idea who the fuck he is, decides to come up to me and do that weird, awkward, leaning on the wall thing next to somebody who's just like, you're in my personal space, can you move? type of a situation. So I obviously stepped to the side to try and get out of the whole "you're in my bubble" situation. So I turned to them, and in my head I'm just like, do you need something? But outwardly I was like, hi. Because I was very, shy. I mean, unless you knew me. If you knew me, I was fucking obnoxious. But I was just there, very uncomfortable, like, what the fuck do you want? And this guy, literally, the first words out of this boy's mouth, and he had to be at least 15 or 16, and I was over here fucking 13, barely. And this guy just looks me in the eyes after looking over the rest of me and goes, "Have you ever had sex?" And I'm just like, what? Like, not only are we in a church, but I have never in my life seen, met, or at all have spoken to you before. I am like 3 or 4 years younger than you, and the first thing that you say to me is, "Oh, have you ever had sex?" What is that? Who does that? And I'm just there like, what? What? And like my face is just like horror of like, I don't even talk about this with the friends that I have. What the fuck? You're scaring me. And he's just still there leaning awkwardly and looking me in the eye and just making this little like really bad attempt at a flirty face. Like his fucking eye is twitching because he's not doing it right. And I'm just like absolutely mortified. And I'm just standing there fucking staring at him, and he's just like, "So have you?" And I'm just like, no. Like it literally just, the word just like cracks out of my throat like, no. And then he just gets this weird smug little smile on his face that just is so creepy. And he's just like, "Would you like to?" And I'm just like, fucking, where is my mother? I need an adult. Help me. Thankfully, one of my friends at the time, my friend Israel, came up and started talking to me. He had no idea what had just happened, but he just walked up and started talking to me. And I was just like, oh, thank God. Somebody I know, please get me out of this situation. And I just like scoot over towards him. It's like, "Oh, hi, yeah, good to see you. How was your week?" And then the other guy's just standing there confused, apparently, not understanding why that didn't fucking work. And then freaking Israel just turns to the guy. It's like, "Oh, hey, are you one of her friends?" And he's just like, "No, just being friendly," and then he leaves. And that was the end of that. Thank you, Israel, for saving my freaking innocence that day. Oh, the next thing I'd like to talk about is a thing that happened in high school. So we were doing our tax tests because I was the last generation that got grandfathered into tax testing instead of doing STAR testing. Thankfully, I am too dumb for STAR testing. But I was sick the day before the testing happened, so I didn't get to go to all my classes. Unbeknownst to me, the teacher had assigned a small book for everybody to read during the testing days, so that when we came back, we could do a conversation on this book. And so we went to testing the next day, and everybody obviously was told to bring a book to read for if they finish their tests early, and we still have time waiting for everyone else to finish, that kind of a thing. At the time, I was reading a book series by Terry Goodkind called the Sword of Truth series that I absolutely love. I don't think I will ever find a book series I love more than that. Anyways, not knowing that there was an assigned reading, I brought that book to read. So we were sitting in class after we did our testing, and we were reading our books and stuff, and I look around and I notice all the other kids have the same book. And I was like, oh, what's going on? I go around and I start asking everybody, hey, why does everyone have the same book? And they're like, oh, yesterday the English teacher gave us all this book to read, and we're supposed to have it read by tomorrow for class, for a group discussion. And I was like, what? So freaking the next day, because at the end of testing, we had to go home. So the teacher wasn't even there anymore. So like, I was like, what the fuck do I do? And that class I had was after lunch. My English class was after lunch. So the next freaking day, I had to go to the teacher and be like, hey, can I get my book? Because obviously I didn't have it. And she gets like this really disappointed look on her face. And she was like, yeah, I know you didn't pick it up. Is it really, like, are you really going to be able to get this done? You were supposed to have it read by now. And I was just standing there like fucking, I'm sorry? Because like I have a fear of authority. It's a lot worse with male authority than it is with female authority, but it is to the point where even if they're telling me something good, I will literally have to fight back tears. So I was already having a hard time having to go up knowing that I was supposed to have it read and ask for the book. So having her look at me with the disappointment and disapproval in her face and in her voice, with a very, very clear, you should have read this by now, I was just trying not to have a fucking breakdown. So I was just standing there looking at her like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you want from me, because like, I was sick. I didn't know. No one told me. What do you want me to do? And like, I don't think she realized that that's what happened, because she was a caring teacher. Had she understood that, she would have just been like, oh, here's your book, try to get through it. But like, I was so in that moment that I could not verbalize what had happened. She's just like, all right. So she gave me the book, and I fucking spent in between doing stuff in classes and walking between classes, and when I got done with assignments and all my lunch period getting through the book, which seems like a lot for a book that was this thick, but I have really severe dyslexia that gets a lot worse when I'm anxious. But I did manage to get through the book before I had to go to the class and before we had our discussion. So I was able to participate in the discussion and get a good grade for it, because the functionality of our discussions was everyone needs to speak at least 3 times and have something meaningful to say. But like that whole interaction was just 90% me standing there like, I'm sorry. I cried when I got home. I'm not gonna lie to you, that was awful. Another deer in the headlights situation I had was actually pretty recent, which is something that happened with some kids in the classes I teach at the studio. So I have one child that's a little bit wild, very playful, sometimes forgets that there's a personal space thing that needs to be had. And it's not usually a big problem. It's usually just like she'll be touching somebody's face and they'll be like, stop, 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 stop. And I have to tell her stop means stop. But about 3 or 4 weeks ago, during the middle of class, when all of the students were there, this kid, I'm helping one of the kids go across the floor like toe, ball, heel, a little thing with tap shoes. And I just hear, stop it, really loud, like distressed stop it. So I whip the fuck around, and then I see her hit the other kid. Like, it's not like a really bad hit. It was meant to be like a playful hit, but it is like a hit you in the face hit. And it's just the other kid's like, don't hit me. And I'm just like, oh my God. In the middle of this class that I am teaching, where I am responsible for these children and their parents are probably watching through the one-way mirrors, one of my students just hit one of the other students. And like I stand there for a second in a fucking panic. And then I just like, I just rush over and I'm like, no, this is not a thing. You will not hit the other kids. Like, I react accordingly. Like, I'm not freaking out, actually, but I am using my adult you are in trouble voice. And I went over there and was like, you will apologize right now. And like, I made her apologize, and I was like still in a fucking panic, but it was very much like an, oh God, what just happened kind of moment. Oh, I was so panicked that after class, the parents would be like upset and I would have to calm them down, which thankfully did not happen. The parents of my students are just so wonderful and understanding, and I'm so thankful that I have understanding parents for that class. But like, oh God, I was terrified. Having stuff like that happen when you're responsible for these small children is just, it's always mortifying. And the last story that I'm going to talk about today is one that happened when I was being interviewed for the housekeeping job that I currently have. So, obviously, when you go to apply for a new job, you put references for your previous jobs. So I went in there and I met Ralph, who was the GM at the time, and I love that man. He is so friendly, such a great personality. He was very good at his job. He's a wonderful person. He's great. I love him. But Ralph was there and he was like, hi, it's nice to see you. Let me shake your hand. Very friendly, very bubbly, very trying to ease my anxieties over being in an interview. Very friendly, making jokes kind of a situation. And after we did the whole interview thing, he was like, hey, I'm gonna call your references, and if they have some good stuff to say, then I'm pretty sure you got yourself a job. And I was like really excited about that, obviously. And then he proceeds to pull out the paperwork that I had initially given him with obviously my references and stuff on them. And he pulls out his phone and he calls them in front of me. Like, just sitting right there across the table, calls my references in front of me. Like, he calls one of them and they don't pick up because they're busy. He's like, all right, I'll call them back later, and after leaving him a message. And then he calls another one and then they answer, and he puts it on freaking speaker. He's just on the phone with Stacy, who was one of the managers at Taco Cabana that I worked with. Just freaking in the middle of our interview, just like, hey, I'm calling in reference to this person. They put you as a previous manager, and I wanted to see what kind of a worker they were, what you had to say about them. And I'm just there like, why? Like, I knew Stacy wasn't going to say anything unpleasant about me because Stacy loved me. She was a great manager, and in turn I worked as best as I could when I was with her. I mean, I always work as best as I can, but I was extra friendly because I liked her. And I knew that she knew I always tried to do my best and that I was good at my job. So I wasn't like afraid she was going to say something bad, but just the whole situation was just an, oh God, why is this happening? And like, it went over fine, but I was just like fucking, my blood pressure just fucking went like right through the fucking roof. Anyways, that is all that I have for this video. I hope you guys liked it, but if you didn't, that is perfectly okay and perfectly understandable. But hopefully I'll see you in the next video anyway, but until then, I hope your day is just as lovely as you are. So, bye! Are you a keyboard? Because you are just my type.